Hello, listeners. It's Gunter here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organisation cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number one in Australia and number 5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts to listen and follow in 2024. With an average of 50,000 downloads per episode each week from listeners all around the world, our reach is significant and growing. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spiegner Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer at Miranda at noirtainment.com. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. And today I'm going to take a look at a topic that's very close to my heart. And that is training male therapists to work with men. Over the past 40 years, I've dedicated my career to understanding and reshaping masculinity through therapeutic practice. I recognized very early on in the piece that the way that we as men have been socialized is a tough gig. And that is that we're going to need to really dig deep for us to be able to make the sort of changes that we need to live healthy, physically and mentally healthy lives and have deep and meaningful relationships with people. So what I thought I'd do today is just share with you my journey and how I've integrated several different psychotherapeutic approaches in my work and explain how that has shaped the framework that I've begun to develop and I'm hoping to evolve, which is the whole framework around making good men great, which is there to help men engage in and sustain not just therapeutic relationships, but in general, healthy relationships. So where did I start? Well, I came out of university in the early 80s and started working with two specific groups that were sort of interconnected. The first one was people with addictions, and the second one was with Vietnam veterans, so predominantly male. And it was that intersection that I began to see the destructiveness of the patriarchal ideology that we as men have been exposed to and socialized in. So one of the things that also stood out was that I quickly realized that a lot of men were reluctant, firstly, to seek help, and secondly, to remain engaged in therapy. And it wasn't just psychological therapy, it was actually physical therapy as well. You know, one of the things that I kept seeing is men delaying going to their GP, men not following through with the appropriate, rehab that they needed or the surgery that they required. And they would play this sort of game of Russian roulette. So it's testing. And I wanted to understand what some of these barriers were really about. And the first thing that I began to really see was that we as men were conditioned to see vulnerability as a weakness. And therapy was something that was either unnecessary or even emasculating. It was for women. Now, on a professional level, aside from my training at university in the cognitive behavioural therapies, I also became very, very interested into other models of therapy. Psychodynamic therapy, which is an approach that emphasizes understanding or reaching the unconscious mind and past experiences, which illuminates the pain that we experience deep within that we often can't consciously get a grip on. Now, I saw firsthand how unresolved conflicts from childhood influenced men's behaviours and relationships. I personally experienced that. So, for example, one client who I worked with very early on the piece, who I'll call John, had some serious struggles with authority figures. And on top of that, actually had an enormous amount of difficulty expressing his emotions. Now, through using psychodynamic exploration, we uncovered what his father was actually really like, because he had given his father a sort of sanitized, constructed persona, an avatar that wasn't actually all that helpful. When I first asked him about his relationship with his father, he said, "Oh no, he's a good bloke," And then as we continued to work in therapy, some of that construction, some of that avatar began to show cracks. What actually emerged through therapy was that we uncovered that his father was actually emotionally distant and authoritarian, leading John to unconsciously replicate these dynamics in his adult life. But not only, replicate them, he actually would exhibit a childlike response to anyone who was like his dad. He would lose his sense of empowerment, his sense of actual presence. So as I progressed, I felt the need to move into more and incorporate more direct and experiential approaches. And that's when I started integrating humanistic existential concepts in my work. So what does that mean to those of you who are uninitiated in the psychobabble that we often gotten used to using? Well, basically what it means is that my focus in humanistic existential therapy is on the here and now of my experience and how it manifests within my body, within my mind, within, my beliefs and attitudes. So this perspective also emphasizes personal growth. That is, we can't just sit and stagnate. We talk about self-actualization. And most importantly, we find or look for meaning in life, ideals that resonate well with many men once they can look past the initial discomfort, which a lot of us feel because we inherently often reach into the judgmental parts of our relationship with ourselves. The other one that I found also had quite an influence on me was Carl Rogers' concept of unconditional positive regard as a very powerful tool from this approach. It's very easy for us often to meet a male who's more traditionally socialized, who's essentially exhibiting some of those patriarchal traits and be very judgmental of them. Now, all that's going to do is alienate him away from considering that there could be an alternative way of being, of living. So, in that context, I remember working with a guy called Mark. Now, he straight off the bat came into therapy feeling judged and misunderstood. Now, I spent a long time creating a non-judgmental space and showing genuine empathy. And I helped Mark explore his emotions and his experiences much more openly. But it took a long time because, let's face it, he just didn't come in, sat down and go, oh, yeah, this guy's cool. He's not judging me. That's not how it went. He was at times withdrawn, at times hostile. He would have walls up. I would make an observation and he would immediately take it as a criticism and challenge me on it. I would get things like, oh, you're just like my father, or it was like, you don't understand me. So all these reactions, these defenses and projections to keep us from really meeting on an authentic ground. But eventually, he began to show signs of trust. He began to open up more, and this shift allowed him to see therapy not as a critique of his masculinity, but as a journey towards a more authentic and fulfilling life, one which is less fraught with adversity, which is less fraught with conflict, especially negative conflict. It's, a place where, he could begin to breathe. So, despite a lot of these advances, I still see gaps in how therapy addresses the unique challenges men face. And so it's one of the things that keeps bringing me back to develop and evolve the Making Good Men Great framework further. This model that I've put together focuses on understanding and reshaping traditional masculine norms. We need to promote personal growth so that we can create social change. Making gender inequality illegal doesn't change the underlying belief sets. In fact, quite often what it does is it creates a reactionary response, one which is a bit like a teenager rebelling against the rules of the home and then sets out to seek like-minded people. One of the things that's really interesting is that people who are prone to radicalization generally, not all the time, but generally have an emotionally and socially problematic home life. They don't feel like they connect. They don't feel loved and cared for and nurtured. And a lot of parents will say, but I do, But the point that I'm making with this is, yes, but does he understand that what you're trying to bring to the table is caring, loving, and geared towards him being part of that family? I mean, the number of times that I've heard fathers say, well, I had to throw him out of the house. Well, there are some times when someone does need to leave the house, but that's rare. We don't just, throw someone out of the home because they don't comply. Yes, if they're dangerous, then we need to take some steps. But that's often very remote. So, if we incorporate what we've learned over history through the pursuit of developing psychotherapies, and if we integrate them, we take pieces that make sense, we can see, for example, how past experiences and unconscious biases shape a man's current behaviour. We've had this big debate about free will and determinism. And I've spent a lot of time, you know, tossing between the two. Part of me goes, no, I have free will. Another part of me goes, well, hang on a minute. If all my experiences, conscious and subconscious, go to feed into my decisions and my behaviors now, how much free will do I actually have? Right? Is it limited? Has it got a, ceiling to it? I need to explore that more. I need to understand that more. So my view currently in that is that a lot, if not all, our experiences from the past influence our decisions in the now. And if we are not conscious enough, that can really come back to bite us. So we have the capacity to begin an evolutionary, educational, social process that takes us away from this unhealthy way of being. So let me talk about a few practical applications in this context. And certainly I want to talk about training therapists in this because, men still find it difficult to engage in therapy and they still don't stay long. So as a therapist, I need to understand biases. We need to help therapists recognize their conscious and unconscious biases. One of the podcasts was on transference and countertransference, and this is where that fits in. Let me give you an example. A therapist who values stoicism may unintentionally reinforce a client's emotional suppression. We need to use reflective practices and supervision to uncover these biases. We need to be really good at building therapeutic relationships. That is absolutely crucial and key to helping our clients engage and stay engaged in therapy. We can pay lip service to the idea of a safe, non-judgmental space where men can express vulnerabilities without fear of judgment, but it doesn't take a lot to challenge or threaten that. I could react non-verbally to something that my client picks up that will later on come out in therapy where they will express having felt judged. Oh, I saw that look in your eye. Or, when I said that, you crossed your arms. So we need to be very, very good at active listening. We need to be able to empathize, but not personalize. And we need to have essentially unconditional positive regard. We need to respect that person's humanity. I don't need to agree or respect what they did. We need to have therapists also skilled in the capacity to explore past experiences. And this comes through understanding psychodynamic, frameworks and techniques. We also need to be able to help the person understand the relationship between mind and body, somatic work. When I get distressed, the changes in my body, what that means to me. This sort of deep diving into experiences, both past and present, and the relationship between the two is crucial in my thinking. The other part which is really important is the whole promotion of personal growth. We seem to have this misunderstanding that once I get to 18 or 21 or 25, that's it. I don't change or grow as a person any further. That's just a nonsense. We know from the neurosciences that we keep growing, especially mentally, psychologically, but also neurologically, and that we can do a lot to offset even, injured brains. So if that's the case, I can work with my attitudes, my beliefs, my values to become a greater me. We need to redefine ideas of self-actualization. We need to really get a handle on what is true success. What is the meaning of that success? What is the purpose of me being here? The other part of it is I do believe that the model that I put together in Making Good Men Great is a functional framework for helping men to change at a deep level. You know, the capacity to help someone directly or indirectly to challenge their traditional norms, right, and create supportive relationships and are willing to take up a greater attachment in their community and create attachment hubs is fundamentally really, really important. So let me give you some final thoughts, a little bit about philosophy. One of the things that's important in my work and growth as a person, as a therapist, is philosophy. It plays a significant role in my integrated approach. By encouraging men to engage with existential questions about meaning, purpose, and identity, I help them construct a personal philosophy that aligns with their authentic self rather than with their constructed social expectations. This philosophical exploration often leads to profound personal insights and a more grounded sense of self. The capacity for me to conceptualize that I have a relationship with myself as much as I do have a relationship with others is fundamental in that framework. People rarely ever reflect on the fact, well, what's my relationship with myself like? We lead them to it. Now, to conclude, I want to just say that training male therapists to work with men effectively requires a multifaceted approach. I had to dig deep into my own transference issues and be able to accept my counter transference in my relationships with my clients, both men and women. So integrating psychodynamic and humanistic existential therapies with the Making Good Men Great framework, I have found to be enormously useful in helping men to engage deeply in a therapeutic relationship and stay in it for long enough to achieve lasting change. Because again, one of the problems that we have in our society today is therapy is short term. But a lot of things don't change short term. If I have 6 or 10 sessions with someone, most of the time I'm simply scratching the surface. Yes, I can help them to deal with some of their symptoms. But, you know, the risk is that in the next crisis, all that goes out the door and they're back to square one. So, on that note, there's lots of positives, but we have a long way to go, both in terms of research, in terms of philosophical understanding, and in our therapeutic work. And for those of you out there who are therapists, you know, don't just throw this out with the bathwater because CBT or DBT is the therapy of choice. Most experienced therapists that I know use integrated approaches. What perhaps possibly makes me somewhat different is I've sat down and deliberately began to create a framework to look at what I can draw from the vast history of previous therapists and therapies and to look at what is it that works for me in my relationship with my clients. So again, let me thank you for joining me today on Inspired Change with Gunter. I hope this discussion has illuminated the importance of understanding and reshaping masculinity in therapy. Remember, we can inspire change and make good men great by fostering self-awareness, reflection, introspection, and broaden our awareness. And through that, also our emotional intelligence and our empathy will flourish. So until next time, stay inspired and keep making a difference. This is me signing off. Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com. For inquiries regarding broadcast topics or appearing on the show, email Miranda@noirtainment.com. That's Miranda at NOIRTAINMENT.com.